Haribol, pranams to you all. Welcome to explore the land of faith together. Today we will talk about the growth of faith from Shraddha, tender faith, to Nishtha, firm faith, or faith that is informed by revelation, divine knowledge that is coming to us through our teachers and through our scriptures. I will begin by reciting a few prayers, and you are welcome to join them, or if you have some other prayers or mantras that are closer to your heart, feel free to say them as a blessing for our meeting today. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaham Vansakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Panavebhyo Vaisnavebhyo Namo Namaham Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Kododaye Pushpavanto Chitro Sando Tamonudo Vandeham Sri Ramakrishna Abhayat Saranastako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Supalapriyom. The growth of faith and the growth of love are often compared with a creeper, a vine that grows from a small seed and slowly rotates towards the sun. In our last talk, we shortly discussed how it all began, the origin of faith, how we knowingly or unknowingly have served Vaishnavas along the way, how we somehow or the other have caught their attention, and how their blessing has followed us ever since, helping us to come in contact with these high ideals. We talked about how faith is a present from above, from divine themselves, a present that is delivered us by our teachers. And we talked about how we as sadhakas, as practitioners on the path of love, are called and trusted to take good care of the present that we have received. Today we will focus more on the growth of faith. Sri Rupa Goswami, one of the great theologians of Gaudiya tradition, describes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 9 steps of bhakti, 9 steps that we are taking, or 9 phases that we are going through on our path when we are learning to love unconditionally. So Sri Rupa writes, first faith, then holy association, followed by the acts of bhajana, acts of spiritual practice, resulting in the cessation of obstacles, then steadiness, taste, attachment, ecstasy, and divine love. This is the order of stages through which prema, divine love, arises in sadhakas. So today we will go through the first 5 steps out of 9, meaning those steps that talk about faith or the growth of faith. So let's start from the beginning with Shraddha, tender faith. In the beginning, we are opening up to the idea of transcendental mystic reality. We are opening up to understanding that there are so many things that we don't know and that we can't measure in this world. At the level of Shraddha, we are accepting that there's enormous potential for growth in our heart, for the growth of love in our heart. We are accepting the personal idea of God, Krishna, whom we can get to know better and with whom we can start forming the personal relationship. And at the same time, we might not quite understand how lucky we actually are. We have arrived at the level of at the stage of Shraddha by a stroke of inconceivable luck, by the blessing of Vaishnavas. but we might not fully understand how extremely lucky we are, and we might not understand the worth and value of the present that we have received. Sometimes it could happen that we receive a fine work of art or a nice vase as a present from our elders or relatives, an old aunt or mother-in-law. And we say thank you to them and praise the present that we have received. But then secretly in our mind, we might think that, well, it's okay. It's not that bad for an artwork, but it doesn't fit very well in our home with all the other things that we have there. So we hide the present that we get into a closet, and then we are reminding ourselves that when these relatives come for a visit, we must remember then to take out the artwork and put it on the wall at that point. And then later, maybe after years, we might realize that actually the painting or the vase is a rarer piece of art that is extremely valuable. We just didn't know it. That artwork, it could have solved all our financial problems that we were struggling with, but because we didn't know the true value of it, we just had it hiding in the closet. So we don't always fully understand the value of the seed of love, the faith that we are receiving. And also we might not see the value of the stage where we are at the moment in our life. We might not appreciate Shraddha, but see it somehow a bit inferior, like something that we need to leave soon behind. And well, fair enough, we are called to grow. We are called to become Saragrahi Vaishnavas, essence-seeking Vaishnavas, devotees who are able to differentiate what is eternal and essential for the growth of love in us, and what is essential for the spiritual practice that is supporting our growth. But at the same time, in the middle of all these high ideals and a call for growth, I think that the stage of Shraddha, tender faith, it's also something to celebrate. Because, well, we have arrived at the first stage of love. We are already on the way. And it's something that will never be taken away from us. Any step that we take, it will never be lost. On the very first step, we are hearing the encouragement to learn to find what is essential in life. And that takes us to the second stage of bhakti, the next step of faith and love, sadhu sangha, the Association of Devotees. So we listen to different spiritual teachers and learn something from all of them. And at the time we start feeling a special connection with some of them. They are challenging our thoughts. They are inspiring our mind, and they are touching our heart. We want to learn to see the world and meaning of life through their eyes. When I'm listening to them, I feel like, wow, they are seeing the world in a very different way than I'm able to see. And I feel this longing growing, like I would love to learn to see the world in that way too. I have to learn from this person how to do it. And also, if we think about the Gaudiya, the scriptures of Gaudiya tradition, they are so full of knowledge, full of information. They contain everything that there was, everything that there is, and everything that there will be. So there's so much information available that it's easy to get sidetracked or kind of stuck in some curious extraordinary details. So, and there are so many different theological commentaries and interpretations. So we need a guide to, with all of that to help us to find the essential there. My Guru Maharaj Bhaktivedanta Tripurari Swami signs often his emails with the quote from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Katopakari Smritida Priyanam. It's an excerpt, how do you say in English, like one line of the longer verse, which is basically saying a person who can remind one of a beloved not present is considered the most sincere and helpful friend. A person who can remind us about our ideal, about God, about love of our life that is not present here at the moment in a way that we could directly experience it. That kind of person is our most sincere and helpful friend. And when I read that signature for the first time, I have to confess that my first impression was little bit like, wow, that's quite bold thing to say, and quite big promise to make. Like, your most sincere and helpful friend. Well, let's see about that. But if we think about it more closely, our teachers, they are doing so much for us. They are giving us the seed of faith, the seed of love that is coming from the other side, from the land of faith. Our teachers are turning the soil of our heart and planting the seed there. And they are watering and nourishing the little creeper of devotion that starts growing. So we might think that we are serving our teachers in so many ways, but to be honest, quite often it is the other way around. They are serving us in so many ways, and we really need those kind of friends who can inspire us and help us to grow in our faith and practice. So it's essential to find a teacher who can help us to differentiate and find the essential. But it's also important to find spiritual family and other spiritual friends. We need a community, a group of people where we can feel that we can be who we are and we are accepted for who we are. We need a spiritual community where there's space for growth and which is helping us to grow. There are groups and communities where roles are very fixed. And if you start acting in a different way than you have done before, or if you start asking questions you haven't dared to ask before, it's not always treated with appreciation. The groups in general tend to focus more on harmony, safety, and stability. So we need to be conscious of that and consciously pay attention that our spiritual family is easy to join and there's room for diversity. We need to keep the threshold low and the ceiling high. Bhakti Pranaya Padmanabha Maharaj was visiting Finland a couple of months ago, and in one of his in one of the evenings he was talking about how relationships with equals are often the most challenging within the devotee community. So when we meet a newcomer, we often have quite naturally compassion and tolerance with them. We might feel a bit nostalgic hearing the questions, and we might think that, oh, I used to have those questions too back in the days. Or we might see their overflowing enthusiasm and we might think, oh, I used to be like that too. What has happened to me? And then on the other hand, in relation to our teachers and other senior devotees, we usually choose to act with a certain level of respect and little distance, even if we would have a like good and informal relationship with them, we still kind of choose to keep a little bit distance and show us in our best light. My Guru Maharaj often compares Guru with fire. So in order to feel the warmth, we need to be close enough to the fire. But if we go too close too fast, we might get burned. So there's need for certain balance and also sometimes a certain distance. But with equals, we can truly center ourselves. We relax, we laugh, we cry, we center our thoughts more freely. We support and encourage each other. We do service together. We sing and hear together and inspire each other. And at the same time, we also challenge each other, even without intending to. We kind of serve each other as mirrors, and sometimes we see our own shortcomings in others. And in those moments, we can choose. Do I blame that person? Do I put all my energy in trying to change them? Or can I look inside in myself and am I able to learn something about myself and about those things that are kind of shading or covering or preventing the spiritual growth or personal growth as well in myself? Anyway, the point that I wanted to make here is that we can be inspired by all devotees. We can be inspired by those who have already walked the path and serve now us as our guides. And we can be inspired by those who are sharing the path with us and who are seeing the same landscape as we are. And we can be inspired also by them who are just starting the journey and who perhaps in no time will happily be passing us by on their way that is going more or going faster forward. So with the help of our friends, we are coming to the next stage of bhakti, bhajana kriya, where we really enter realms of spiritual practice, again, together with our friends. Bhaktivedanta Thakur, the great theologian of Gaudiya tradition who lived in 19th century, drew a parallel between the verses of Shikshastakam prayer and growth of devotion. So in the second verse of Shikshastakam, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is crying, "So many names you have manifested, and in them invested all your power. There is no hour, no rule to recall them. O Bhagavan, your mercy is so great. But just see my fate, my misfortune. For your name, I have no attraction." I read the verse from Shikshastakam of Sri Chaitanya, book written by Swami Bhaktivedanta Tripurari, one of my favorite books. So at the moment of initiation, our guide is whispering the 16 most beautiful names of God into our ear. And they invite us to repeat them, to sing them, to meditate them alone and together with friends. They invite us to weave those names into our everyday life and keep those names close to our heart at any time, in any place. Cherish them without hard and fast rules for chanting them. And then later we receive other mantras, little prayers that hold the core essence of Gaudiya theology in them. And those prayers help us to deepen our spiritual practice. I was recently listening to lectures that Guru Nista Prabhu was giving about intentional sadhaka, focusing on making progress. And he showed in a very inspiring way the importance of small things in our practice. Like, for example, if we are able to invest 5 minutes more every day into our practice, it will add up And in 1 year, it will be more than 30 hours altogether. In the beginning of our journey, many of us, we tend to go for kind of big things, and we tend to overestimate our capacity or ability to practice, to do the spiritual practice. For example, we might say to ourselves, like, I will read 50 pages of Srimad Bhagavatam every night, or other things like that. And we start enthusiastically, and then when times goes by, we might notice that we have bitten more than we actually can do at right now, at this moment, where we are at our path. And well, there's nothing wrong in being ambitious in our practice and in spiritual life. It shows our eagerness and our willingness to grow. But at the same time, it can be harmful if we are aiming too high. If the result is quitting our practice because we weren't able to do what we planned, or if it results in feelings of guilt or unhealthy feelings of inability. There's also healthy sorrow and healthy remorse that we feel in relation to our practice. Like we read in Shikshastakam, but just see my fate, my misfortune, for your name I have no attraction. Another characteristic of this kind of sorrow is that it makes us eager to chant more, to meditate more, to sing more the names of divine. This kind of remorse doesn't turn us away from our practice or foster self-hatred in us. After all, the process of spiritual progress, it's not about us and our misery and our incapability of practicing. It's about the love of God. It's about the compassion of Lord Nityananda, who is waiting for us and reaching for us with both of his hands. It's about compassion of our teachers, who are willing to travel an endless journey in order to find us, so that they can personally introduce us to their best friend. Krisangi Prabhu is talking often about bhajana kriya, and she's often making a point that the stage of bhajana kriya is characterized by unsteadiness in our practice. I have been encouraged so many times by her when I have been struggling with my practice, and somehow she's always able to find the right words in that situation. So anyway, at the stage of bhajana kriya, we are enthusiastic, and then we lose our interest. We become inspired again by the blessing of our friends and our spiritual family. We might chant and stick to the vows or promises that we have made. We might stick to our practice in outwardly way. But then at the same time, in our mind, we might travel somewhere else in the past or in the future. And we are not really paying attention to what we are doing. And all of this, it's perfectly normal at the stage of bhajana kriya. It's part of our growth. It's not something that most of us can just skip in 1 day or over one night. Bhajana kriya means that we have grown some roots in the soil of love, but the creeper is not yet very strong. We swing and bend with the winds of this world, and at the same time our roots are keeping us grounded. Our spiritual family is guarding us in a way that bigger storms are not hitting us so hard. So anyway, now that the month of Kartik is starting soon, I would like to encourage all of us to think about something that brings us joy and encouragement in spiritual practice, and add a little bit of that in our days. We don't have to make a long list of demands for ourselves. We don't have to pick something that doesn't come to us naturally at that point where we are on the path right now. Our tradition, it's not foremost about the renunciation and self-denial. It's about joy, it's about connection, it's about strengthening the bond with our teachers and with God. So until now we have received the present of faith. We have found a spiritual guide and like-minded devotees around us to inspire and to be inspired by. And we have taken up the spiritual practice. And the more we practice, little by little, we come at the stage of anartha nritti, cessation of obstacles, giving up false values that prevent the spiritual growth in us. My Guru Maharaj is writing about anarthas as activities and thought patterns that get in the way of our ability to understand that which is actually valuable. Under their influence, we are distracted from our practice. We repeat the mantras, but in our mind, we are traveling somewhere else. The notion of thought patterns is especially interesting to me. I find it interesting because because thought patterns, they are often the cause for us to act in a certain way or not to do something. And if we are able to change the way how we think, then we are able to change our behavior. Like, for example, we might have a thought pattern. There's a little voice inside of our head that is saying, for example, that that we are not able to do something. We are not capable of doing something. And as a result of that thought pattern, we are never doing it. But if we manage to change the thought pattern into, for example, well, I could try. I wasn't able to do that 5 years ago, but maybe I have changed. How do I know I have changed if I don't give it a try? And then we might notice that, well, actually, we can do it. We might not be super good at it, but anyway, doing that new thing, it's bringing us joy and inspiration in our spiritual life. So it's worth trying. When I was at school already a long time ago, there was once a philosopher who came to give a class for us. And he was talking about values in general. And at one point, he was a little bit criticizing value surveys that where researchers ask people about their values. He was making a point that often we tend to give an idealistic image of ourselves. For example, we might say that we watch only documentary films, but actually most of the time we are perhaps watching stand-up comedy and reality TV. Or we might say that we value the environment, but actually we don't pay so much attention to it in our everyday life. So he was basically saying that give me your calendar and give me your bank account information, and I will tell you what your real values are. And I remember that I felt a pinch of consciousness when I was listening his talk. Back in the days, or at that time, I hadn't met the devotees yet, but I was quite active in environmental movement and in some environmental activist groups. And hearing the talk, I kind of felt that, oh, I'm not really doing anything for the environment, and I definitely should be doing more if I'm saying that I value it. And I felt that way, even though objectively speaking, I was doing quite a lot, like considering my life situation and other responsibilities that I had. If I were to meet that philosopher today, I would probably challenge him a little bit and ask him that isn't the point of values also that they are setting us an ideal? Aren't they showing a way in which we want to grow, like a pole star, North Star, or the South Cross, crooks on the southern sky that are pointing out the orientation? We are not there yet. We haven't reached our goal, but we have the direction clearer in our minds where we want to go. So there's always this kind of balancing in our life, recognizing honestly where we are, not falsely pretending to be something else, and at the same time seeing our ideal and actively reaching for it with the strength and abilities we have at this moment, not pushing ourselves too hard or too little. Srimati Bhakti Rasa is giving talks on Tuesdays in October with the title Unmasking the Demons in the Kingdom of the Heart. And in her last talk, she made a really nice point about anartha nivritti. She said that anartha nivritti is not an action in itself. We don't engage in anartha nivritti, we engage in sadhana. And as a result, in engaging in spiritual practice, that will be anartha nivritti. The weeds in our little inner garden are being pulled out so that the creeper of love can strengthen and have space to grow. We are meditating Krishna's names, we are chanting them, we are singing their glories. We invite Krishna in our heart in the form of his name. Anarthas are not cleansed from our heart immediately. It takes some time, but our humility and our desire to overcome them attracts the compassion of God, compassion of Krishna Chaitanya. And one day he will come and wash and cleanse our hearts, like he cleansed the Kundita temple. He's dancing at the stage of our minds and inside of our heart. And even the last bit of false pride, pratishta, which is the root of all anarthas, is swept away. We don't have to be steady in our practice in order to be cleansed. We will become steady and fixed in our faith through the practice which is cleansing our heart. So now we have given up false pride and good and bad habits and thought patterns that have been distracting us from our ideal. And through that, we have arrived at the stage of nishtha, firm faith or faith that is informed by revelation. We have engaged our intelligence, emotion, will, and actions in a conscious service of our ideal. Bhaktivedanta Thakur is connecting nishtha with the third verse of Shiksastakam. Oops, I lost the page. Here it is. Being humble like a blade of grass, being more tolerant than a tree, expecting no admiration, yet showing others veneration, one should glorify Hari constantly. Just before this verse in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Krishna Chaitanya is asking his associates, Swarup Damodar Goswami and Ramananda Roy, to hear about the symptoms or characteristics of the practice by which the true love for God is awakened in our heart. What kind of meditation, what kind of prayer, what kind of chanting and singing has the power to change us? Sri Krishna Chaitanya says, constant chanting of Hari, humbly, tolerantly, and pridelessly. My first impression when I hear something like that is that, wow, it's impossible. How can I ever be able to do that? But the point is, I would not be able to do it myself, but I'm not alone. I have my spiritual family around me. My God is showing me the way, and the God, Krishna, is there as well, staying with me in the form of his name. My Guru Maharaj has written words of encouragement in his book, Shikshastakam of Sri Chaitanya. I quote, Krishna Nam will gradually qualify us to chant with these symptoms as we progress from Anishta Bhajana Kriya through Anartha Nrivriti to Nishtha Bhajana Kriya. Then with steady practice, uninterrupted by anarthas, our chanting will lead to prema. So even if I personally might feel that it's impossible for me to reach even the midterm goal, not to speak of the final ideal, I can trust and I can learn to trust the words of my teachers. My Guru Maharaj also refers to these four virtues as our regulative principles: humility, tolerance, not accepting honor, yet honoring others. So even if these principles are fully realized at the stage of Nishtha, they can guide us from the very beginning, from the very first step of our journey. We can ask ourselves in different difficult or pleasant situations of life, how is this helping my humility to grow? How is this making me more tolerant or more kind to others? How is this helping me to fight my pride or my tendency to seek for recognition? At the stage of Nishtha, firm faith, we also manage to fully harmonize our intellect with our heart. The revelation, the eternal wisdom in the form of our scriptures and in the form of the teaching of our teachers is starting to make sense in a balanced way. At that point, all that we read is strengthening our faith and is not turning us away from it, because we are able to differentiate things that are essential to the growth of faith and other things that might have been essential or more essential in the different time, in a different place, under different circumstances. In the beginning of a spiritual path, we might be a bit black and white in our thinking, and that's also part of the process. Even as a result of it, we might sometimes be quite hard on ourselves and even to others. But when we grow, we start seeing all different shades of gray with the help from our teachers, and we learn to appreciate the broadness and flexibility of our tradition. We learn to see how it is eternal and fresh at the same time. Sometimes it requires taking a little bit distance from black and white thinkers when we are celebrating the all different shades of gray. We are respecting them and treating them kindly. And at the same time, we need to take responsibility of our personal spiritual well-being as well, making sure that our main association helps us to grow in the right direction. And then when we move forward, our perception changes again. The winds of the world, they are no longer able to shake the creeper of love out of balance anymore. We start seeing all the beautiful colors, and everything will be connected to our spiritual ideal. And what are the colors anyway? Krishna is black, Balarama is white, Radharani is golden. There are so many beautiful colors inside of Gaudiya tradition, and all of them are beautiful. We don't anymore have to differentiate between people, since we see only devotees everywhere. Okay, today we have talked about the growth of faith. So in the beginning of the path, we receive the seed of love. We make a conscious choice to believe. We make a choice to look through the window of opportunity that has been opened to us by our teachers. We believe in order to understand at least something about the essence and purpose of life, about means and the goal. And when our journey continues, we find spiritual family and guide who will help us to move forward on the path with the speed that is right for us, considering our personal situation and our background. We practice, sometimes full of enthusiasm, sometimes with less enthusiasm. And we might sometimes give up our practice and pick it up again. So it's all part of the process as we move forward. And when we approach the names of God with humility and willingness to give up obstacles that are still on our path, little by little they are removed, and there's space for our faith to grow. And then with that, we arrive at the stage of firm faith with humility, confidence, and trust that the current of divine love flowing from the heart of our teachers can carry us further, so that in one day we will be able to experience that kind of love ourselves. Okay, I think we can stop here for today. I would love to hear some of your thoughts and experiences about the growth of faith. If you have some words of encouragement to share with us, that would be wonderful to hear them. And if there are any questions or comments related to this talk, I'm happy to hear them. Let's see. I'm making sure that you can unmute yourself if you want to comment, and please make sure that you are on the English channel, so then you all can hear.
Haribol.
Haribol.
I have a question. And there is a saying that faith takes a long time to build, but it's very easy to destroy. I was wondering if you can share your thoughts on that quote in relation to the things you've been talking about today.
Thank you. That's really a nice question. So I will repeat the question just to make sure that everyone is hearing it. So Shyamananda is mentioning that there is a saying like faith takes a long time to build up, but it's easily destroyed. Sorry if I didn't quote it quite word to word, but that was the point anyway. And he was asking if I could say something about that in relation to things that we have talked today. I think that's very important and essential question. I have also heard the saying in a bit different form. saying like trust takes a long time to build, and but it can be broken in a blink of an eye. And it's actually like faith and trust. They are very much the same thing, or in many ways I find that they are synonyms, because also when we talk about growth of faith, we are not so much talking about the growth of information or growth in knowledge, even though there is that point as well. But most of all, we are talking about the growth in trusting, how we are able to trust the way, how we are able to trust our teachers, how we are able to trust the divine. And I'm thinking that that even though we are moving in a or we are talking about spiritual things, spiritual practice, and kind of moving around in a spiritual level, if we can say so, we still have every one of us has our background and our personal experiences about different relationships in this world. And if our trust has been wounded before in relation to other people or in relation to high ideals, it will take time before we kind of recover and are able to build up that trust again. And in that sense, I would just say that it's good to be compassionate with ourselves and also with each other in that sense. Kind of give us time, like you said, the faith and trust, they take long time to build up. So that's one of the points I would like to make. It also comes to my mind that this kind of questions, we might have them in relation to faith in general or a spiritual tradition in general, but particularly we might have that kind of thoughts in relation to our teachers and to our guides. And in those cases, I would say that that if it feels like a lot to put your trust in a teacher, in a certain teacher, then it's okay to start first by finding a spiritual family around you, finding people that inspire you, and kind of finding your home there, and then perhaps seeing who are they following, who are they listening to, and kind of building the trust little by little. And then well, perhaps third point that just pops to my mind is also that that we are also it's a great responsibility to talk about spiritual things and to be in interaction with each other about them, so that we are not unintentionally hurting or like cracking the faith that is just slowly growing each other, but that we always try to somehow support and encourage the growth of it, because it's such a fragile thing, like you mentioned. All right, thank you. There's a comment in the chat, in the comment section in Spanish. Would you like to translate that, Kaliuka Pavan Prabhu? All right. All right, thank you. Did the English channel listeners hear what Kaliuka Pavana Prabhu was saying?
Yes, we could hear, but the people on Facebook and on YouTube, they won't hear what he said.
All right. Thank you, Sakirati. So, just to summarize shortly, Mahapriya from Mexico was writing a comment, wrote a comment in the comment section, and she was thanking for this class series, like Sri Chaitanya Sangha talks, and she was sharing some of her like personal experience, how she's trying every moment to grow, and how she's motivated to move forward in her practice, and how tolerance and humility are like she's inspired by those ideals as well. And she mentioned that she appreciates this circle of classes because they help in her practice. And I thank you for this comment. It's a nice comment, and I can totally agree with that. For me as well, these classes that these talks that are running like every day, they have been a huge inspiration. I'm not always able to attend live, but usually I'm trying to listening them later. And I kind of feel that many of you who are in these talks with me like we are listening the same talks, and we are listening the Swami call. It's like even we haven't met, it's almost like I know you already. So it's a nice inspiration for me as well. All right. Thank you. Thank you again. I think there are no more. Oh, there's one more comment by Mohini Dasi. Just to say, I agree also that these talks are very encouraging, and I appreciate the positivity and realism as well. I loved the suggestion for Karthik about choosing something you love in your spiritual life and doing that more. Thank you. Thank you, Mohini Dasi. All right, now I think we can stop here for today. So thank you for your presence. Thank you for your comments and questions. Thank you for the Spanish translation, Kaliuka Pavana Prabhu. And I will continue exploring the land of faith on next Monday, 18th of October. And then we will be discussing Saranagati, surrender, as the outer expression of faith. I hope to see you there. I offer my gratitude and my hope to grow in faith and in humility at the feet of my spiritual teachers and at the feet of Vaishnavas, who are like wish-fulfilling trees, full of kindness and compassion to all living beings. Sri Gaudiya Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai, Gaura Nityananda ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaura Premanande, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol.
Srimati Hari Priya dasi ki.
Jai.
Jai.